The lack of an effective public transport systems in most cities in Africa means that everyone with a car is forced to use it more often than not, piling pressure on the available road network. I'm in Blantyre, the commercial and industrial capital of Malawi, to give you the perspective.
In this city, one of the oldest cities in southern Africa, infrastructure development has hardly grown over the decades. This is not the case in terms of vehicle population though. The Malawi Ministry of Transport and Public Works projects that by the year 2036, vehicle population in Blantyre will hit over 1 million. It also suggests that studies in 12 African countries have shown that even when there is no economic growth, vehicle ownership still rises. When Mukiza Godley ventured into the taxi business in 2012, business was thriving. Years later, the struggle to find parking space whenever he is picking or dropping a client has taken the bliss out of his day-to-day job.
As a taxi driver, we have our specific place where we used to park our cars. And those places, we don't pay anything. But if we are trying to drive from that place going to the other street within the town, we are being charged to pay 100 kwacha at 1 hour. So let's say suppose I've parked my car maybe 10 hours. It means I will pay $1.5. Then I'll spend that place maybe 10 hours without getting any customer. You may find that end of the day I'm wasting close to $5 without picking any customer within the town.
On a typical day, the streets of Blantyre are filled with cars angling for space on the city's increasingly congested streets. Double and even triple parking is rampant, and cars often park on spaces meant for pedestrians and cyclists. Observers say the nightmare of car parking has dulled businesses in the central business district.
I prefer to use my car just because of time. Because when I use the public transport, I spend a lot of time in the public transport compared to my car. Because where I stay, it's a 15-minute drive to town. But when I use the public transport, I spend almost 40 to 45 minutes to get into town.
And how much do you spend on parking alone?
I spend about 100 kwacha per hour, and it translates to 30,000 kwacha per month. As a business owner, I feel like I'm losing a lot because my aim is to make profits, not to lose money. We find our cars that they have been broken into by thieves. They have tampered our windscreen, our doors, so we have also to pay for that.
Give us your experience about how the issue of parking is affecting your business and affecting even your clients, your customers.
I spend most of the time moving around, checking for where to park my car. So time like those, I lose my time. I also lose a lot of fuel. And sometimes I park very far from where my shop is. And also my customers, sometimes they complain. They say, we can't get into your shop because of the parking spaces. We can't find parking spaces near your shop. So it's a turn-off to them.
The traffic congestion and the time lost. Welcome to Traffic and Travel, Nairobi style. Just like Malawi, street parking in Nairobi is scarce and particularly expensive, costing anywhere between $2 and $10 a day. And when you find one, the safety of your car is not guaranteed.
Parking slots are scarce and expensive. But savvy entrepreneurs have taken advantage of this gap to create a thriving business.
This parking silo has been in operation since the late 70s, so it's over 40 years old. Initially, it was designed to provide parking for transnational building, but over time we realized that we still have excess capacity, that even when all tenants have parked, we still have about 120 parking bays which are free. And that is why we thought of taking advantage of that extra capacity to accommodate other vehicles whose owners don't use these buildings. They are not tenants in the building. So we have two models of parking here. The first one is what is dedicated to our tenants, and we normally give them 2-year licenses, and payment is done quarterly. The cost is 10,000 shillings every month. Then the other option is now for anybody who might be looking for parking in the town, that we charge for short-term arrangement, and the cost is, for the first 1 hour is 50 shillings, then for any additional 1 hour is 50 shillings, and with a capping at 500 shillings. So if you park here for 24 hours, the capping is 500 shillings every day. Every quarter, the revenue is about 10 million shillings, and the cost, the expenses, we have 4 main expenses. The first one, of course, is the maintenance of the lifts. As you have seen, we have 3 huge lifts to hoist the vehicles up and down. Then we have security arrangements and the parking management system. Then we have valets, the ones who bring the vehicles up, and other small operation costs. And then, of course, the utilities, the electricity that we consume, cleaners to maintain this place. So this cost takes about 20% of the revenue. So about 2.5 million shillings every quarter goes to expenses. I would recommend this kind of business for investors to invest, because we've seen there's a lot of demand for parking bay, but the trend has been changing. Before, people would park the whole day, but over the last couple of months, especially since COVID came, we've realized, I guess because people are working from home, people are just coming for a few hours, and that's why we are leaning towards the model of charging based on the time that is occupied. But it's a good business.
Holy Family Minor Basilica, a church in Nairobi's Central Business District, constructed a 4-story underground parking silo as a way of providing motorists with additional, convenient and secure parking space within the city centre. The silo has a capacity of 516 slots, and it has been installed with sensor monitoring gadgets that show the number of available parking spaces even to drivers outside the building.
Could you give us an overview of how much investment went into this facility?
I would say it's a lot of funds that were mobilized by the church, and also we looked for bridging finances. And I would say that it's in amount of hundreds of millions.
That's hundreds of millions in Kenyan money?
Yes, yes.
What is the capacity of the parking slots that you have?
The capacity of this parking, the underground parking, is 516 vehicles.
In terms of the revenues that you accrue, if you can give us an estimate of how much, maybe quarterly, you're looking at as an institution that you generate out of the business.
Considering that the core business of this parking, of these establishments we have in this area, is actually evangelization, worship. And therefore we wanted first of all to achieve parking spaces for our Christians. And then you realize, of course, we have establishments within this area. Like now we have all the archdioceses and offices within this area. We have a school, and also we have also other facilities within. And we wanted to create ample parking for our Christians, for our tenants, and even for our parents. And I would say we, on quarterly basis, is to the tune of tens of millions. And for us, we are happy with that.
When do you expect to break even out of this investment?
The payback period will be about 6 years. However, you realize if we look at the finances we receive or the revenue we receive on a daily basis, then we can prolate it to about 9 years.
According to surveys conducted by the Institute of Transport and Development Policy in 2016, 30% of the typical traffic congestion observed in Nairobi and Addis Ababa are caused by drivers searching for parking spots. Planning for parking today will have a major effect on private vehicle dependence and congestion in the next 10 years. But what is the viability of this kind of business on the continent?
the population of cars in our cities, in African cities, is growing. And surely we will need more parking spaces. And with the problems that we see around, it is obvious that setting up a car parking business can be one of the viable investments. One of the solutions may be the development of parkades, where you develop a structure that is solely dedicated to parking within the city, so that motorists can only be allowed to park in those parkades. The other solution that I suggest is the development of relevant bylaws by the city authorities. The bylaws must restrict motorists to park in only designated areas. Driving in a private car is a kind of a prestige to an African. Yeah? So people want to drive in their own cars, and we need to move away from that kind of so that people learn to move in public transport. But they can't move in public transport if we don't have efficient and convenient public transport. We are not only talking of buses, we may talk of railway system and the like, and we should have such kind of interchanges within the cities that will facilitate movement or change from one transport system to the other. So if we put all these in place, we are likely to decongest our streets, and parking will not be a big problem as it is now in African cities.